Hello, my name is Kamran Hussain, and in this presentation, I will provide a negotiation debrief based on the scenario where a sales team negotiated with a buying team over energy saving controls for a 50-story office tower. In this debrief, I will identify the negotiation skills and techniques that were evident in this clip, explain why the parties used them, assess what they did well, and suggest where they could improve. To begin, several negotiation skills and methods stood out in this video. First, the seller made strong use of framing and reframing. When the buyers emphasized the competitor's larger installed base and lower price, the sales team reframed the discussion to focus on total cost of ownership. This moved the conversation away from the initial purchase price and towards long-term life cycle saving, reliability, and service. Framing the negotiation in this way is a classic interest-based technique because it speaks directly to the buyer's underlying needs. Second, the seller engaged in interest-based bargaining rather than countering each features or price point directly. They explored the buyer's deeper interests, such as saving energy, minimizing downtime, and securing reliable service, by asking clarifying questions like, is it fair to say you want the best quality measured by performance and reliability at the best price? The sellers encouraged the buyers to confirm their priorities in their own words. Third, the sellers used open-end questions to uncover specific requirements. For example, they asked the buyers to define what they meant by service. This revealed the rapid response time, ideally within 30 minutes, was critical to the buyers. That information gave the sellers the opportunity to emphasize their local presence and quick response capability. Fourth, the sellers relied on objective criteria by presenting detailed financial data. They broke down the cost of products, installation, and operating expenses, and highlighted annual savings and utility rebates. This appealed to rational, evidence-based decision-making instead of subjective comparisons. Finally, the sellers used persuasion and credibility by pointing to their company's 100 years of experience, millions of global installations, and willingness to provide references from satisfied customers. This built trust and reduced the perceived risk of choosing a newer product. Overall, the negotiation demonstrated several things that were done well. The sales team successfully shifted the frame from positional bargaining about price to a discussion of long-term value. They aligned their benefits with the buyer's stated interests, showing how their products met the need for savings, reliability, and service. They also handled objections calmly, particularly when challenged about their smaller installed base. And they showed flexibility, offering to provide customer references immediately, which demonstrated responsiveness and commitment. However, there were also areas where the negotiators could have improved. One area was the use of BATNA and WATNA. The buyer's best alternative was clear the competitor's offer. The sellers could have highlighted the risks of the alternative, such as slow response times or reliance on corporate staff far from the sites. Stressing those risks would have made their own value proposition stronger. Another area was the handling of objections. At times, the seller became a little defensive when discussing their smaller installed base. They could have used bridging techniques more effectively, for example, by acknowledging the importance of an installed base and then linking it back to their innovation, research and development, and proven global success. The sellers also could have made greater use of summarizing statements to check alignment throughout the negotiation. For example, after discussing service response times, they could have summarized by saying, so, to confirm you need a guaranteed local response within 30 minutes and our service team can provide that. This would have reinforced agreement as the discussion progressed. Finally, while they did well to emphasize life cycle savings, the sellers could have quantified comparative risk more clearly. For example, they could have calculated the financial impact on the buyer if service was delayed by hours with the competitor, compared to their own 15 to 20 minutes local response. This would have turned a theoretical advantage into a tangible one. In conclusion, The negotiation demonstrated a strong use of interest-based skills, particularly reframing, open-ended questions, and objective criteria. These contributed positively to the process by steering the discussion away from price competition and towards long-term value and service quality. The negotiators could strengthen their approach by explicitly addressing the buyer's alternatives, bridging more smoothly from objections to advantages, and reinforcing agreements throughout the conversation. If I had been part of the sales team, I would have highlighted not only the strengths of our offer, but also the weaknesses and risks of the competitor's offer, while continuing to focus on alignment with the buyer's key interest. Thank you very much for listening to my negotiation debrief.